For
We'll
the
see.
intro, maybe, at
We'll
least.
see how far we get, right?
Yeah. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Chris?
Brilliant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Binary Thinking.
The purpose of this podcast: expose binary narratives, tribalism, and ego in discourse, politics, current events, and our history. From Amsterdam, it's Marijn.
From Cordoba, I'm Finn.
And from London, I'm Chris. So everyone, thanks so much for all of your feedback on the first two episodes so far. I promise I'll try and speak a little bit slower if Finn promises to stop saying, "That's really interesting." I'd like to thank his brother Jens for pointing that one out. You can always trust on family, hey?
Sheila... Thanks, Jens. No, it was a good point, though. Sheila disagreed with Chris's...
Sheila? Are you Australian? She's called Ashley, mate.
We'll do that bit again.
No, that's perfect. Do it as it is. I love it.
A Sheila
says.
It was a Sheila from somewhere in the world. Ashley disagreed with Chris's respect for Western medicine, but Ollie disagreed with Marijn's respect for Eastern medicine.
There you go.
So, yeah, although I steered us away from this tangent, it seems like people are enjoying the tangents. So maybe the healthcare system could be an interesting topic to discuss on another future episode. Let us know if you're interested in it and we'll start researching. You can get in touch with us by Facebook, sending us a message on there. Everyone's been really positive about the format of the musical interludes. So thanks everyone that messaged to say they loved the teacher interview too. Quick update on that. Her school is looking at phasing out grades, and apparently that's being trialled in 4 states. I suggested she take a chill pill, but apparently, like many schools in America, they've now have random drug testing for teachers. Yay. So this week, what makes dollars but doesn't make sense? We're discussing the current economy and an alternative universal basic income.
Yeah, so universal basic income, quite a subject. Championed, of course, very much by Elon Musk, our current tech guru that everyone is looking up to. It's been a big thing here in the Netherlands recently, mostly championed by a guy called Rutger Bregman. He's done some TED Talks, written books about it, newspaper articles. We've seen some recent experiments happening in Canada, Netherlands, Finland. And yeah, why is this even an issue nowadays, guys?
At this point, can I interject and can we explain exactly what UBI is, just for our listeners, some of whom might not really know what we're talking about when we talk about UBI?
Well, I think here in Holland, what they're trying to aim for is to replace all the normal benefits, like the social welfare system, the benefit system, throw it all over, give everyone a flat rate to have as an income, a basic income from over top of which you can earn an extra living. And there's not any consensus on what this number should be. I've seen a calculation that says the minimum wage should already be covered just by the finances of taking all the other stuff out and just replacing it with a flat rate. But if you would want to give people 60% of model income, which would be a decent way to at least have like your full living covered, and then whatever you're interested in on top of that, or good at on top of that, Chris, you can then add to that, right? It might be something that gets you extra money, great for you. It might just be something you're really good at and contributes to society but doesn't make any money, but still you have enough to survive and have a decent living. So 60% of model. We cannot afford that at the moment, so we'd have to extra tax and rearrange that system. And then there's different ideas to how you can approach that. So I don't think there's one system. In Finland, the same way. I think in Finland, the experiment was just giving unemployed people an amount of money without any requirements, right? Because if you're in social welfare, normally you're required to do job applications or show up for courses. And their way was just, we're going to give people a flat rate, see whatever they do. We're not going to put any demands on it, because that's UBI as well. It's for everyone, no demands. And what I've read, they quit the experiment for not necessarily clear reasons. They just didn't want to invest more money in it. But the people that were on it, they were, as far as I've read, they found it a much better situation also in terms of looking for better new income from other jobs.
Yeah, I read research around the same thing, and if I read sort of like a right-leaning article, right-wing press, they would say the experiment was abandoned. But more neutral press, I think it just ran its course, and right now they're going to spend a year doing research into the data from that and follow up to see, like in a year's time, are they employed gainfully? How did they find it? I think most of what I've read is that it's been studied, but on quite a small scale. We don't know enough to have a definitive answer, right?
No, but the experiments are important. The
Oh
research
God,
is,
yeah,
I think,
sure.
paramountly important, which we started with due to the rising increase of automation.
Yeah, that would be my hope for this podcast, would be to open up the idea of universal basic income, as you explained, Renee, the different types of it, and would be that people are being more open to running trials, running tests, seeing how it works in real life. Because if this is something that will be implemented in the future that could be useful, there's no harm in doing many more tests and trials and seeing really how does it work. There are historical examples that are quite different, like in Alaska they found loads of oil and they gave income to all of the citizens to ensure they wouldn't be in poverty, but that's quite a specific example. Maybe Norway too, and the oil money, but we should try this more, would be my hope about UBI. Not that we should implement it, yes or no, but why don't we do more research and test it out? We'll get into it more later. What is job automation? What's happening? What about the future? Like a new way of tackling the issue of unemployment and of people losing jobs. What do you guys think?
I'm really excited for today. I've been looking forward to this one. I was surprised the last two topics. I thought we'd get more controversial. I thought we'd get in more debates and arguments. But actually, we found a lot of overlapping thoughts and agreements and middle ground. Whereas this one, I have a feeling I'm going to disagree strongly with you both. I hope we can have a rigorous and exciting conversation while still remaining true to our principles of being polite, respectful, finding nuance, and trying to find beyond just yes or no thought pattern on it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it too. Yeah, me too.
Me too. But just before we go on too far, I would like to state that my position is neither really in favour or against UBI, but I think it's a really interesting model, and it's nothing really that new. It kind of it's been tried in a lot of forms before.
This is
I'm kind of on the fence about it.
Hundreds of years old, this idea, right? One thing I'd like to pick apart is you talked about job automation.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that because that has been since the Luddite revolt, right? People have feared that, oh no, cars are going to replace all the horse jobs and factories are going to replace all the manual, the Huguenots won't be weaving textiles anymore. Every time we've had a revolution, a new technological advancement, new jobs have been made, new things that we couldn't even imagine come to replace those jobs and that work. Why is this different? Why are we really going to run out of jobs, or are we just going to run out of boring jobs that can be automated?
I think, first of all, talking about what kind of automation are we talking about? You referenced the car, and there have been waves of industrialization and automation before. But I think what a lot of the people that are thinking about this are saying is that the new wave of automation is going to be a much larger scale than anything we've ever seen before. And then you refer as well to the creation of new jobs. But I would refer to an anthropologist called David Graeber, and he's written a book called Bullshit Jobs. And you also have to question what kind of jobs are we putting back for it, right? I think we're replacing real jobs of value, jobs that actually brought a important thing to the world. Some jobs that were actually needed. Stuff needed to go from one place to the other place. We needed to grow food. And this has been replaced by jobs where people sit in an office, and if you ask them how many hours of real proper work are you doing, it might be 3 hours, might even be 0 hours, because it
15 minutes.
It might not have any benefit to society at all. And it's just a job created to keep someone busy and keep the economy going. So are we just going to replace every worthwhile job with this imaginary job just to sustain the current job economy?
Yeah, I hope not. But I think it's an it's really...
You're not allowed to say that, Finn.
And you caught me. It was an interesting point, though.
Well, get a thesaurus
That was
out.
a great point, Ray. I'd look at it coming from a different angle, especially in terms of, Chris, going back to your first point about new jobs get created all the time. It's like, yeah, they do. But if you look at the top 100 jobs, the only job in there that's been created recently in the last sort of 20, 30 years is software programmer, computer engineer. Most of the other jobs are still there. So we've seen some new jobs, but they're things which are quite high-skilled jobs like computer programmer, app developer. And then you've got other jobs like Uber driver or Airbnb host. And these are new jobs, but the
Uber driver only
two,
temporarily.
yeah, temporarily until driverless cars, right?
Exactly.
So that's at itself in risk of automation. But then also like Airbnb host, and this favors people who already have a lot of resources, but for anyone else who doesn't have resources, it's perhaps a risk.
Do you know
And I'm not saying there won't be new jobs. I think there will be new jobs, but I'm not sure that they can. The job creation will keep up with the demand that's going to be created from automation.
Do you know the top 5 jobs from that list, or like a general selection of what are the top jobs? Because I wonder if all those top jobs are in very high chance of being replaced by automation.
And most of them tend to be like data entry.
But they're very unlikely ones as well, because what people are forgetting is that people are always thinking like drivers and data entry and the simple things. But it's not just that. It's not just that. Well, think about Watson, the IBM supercomputer. It's being trained, the Watson AI. One of its major points of focus is medicine. It's being a doctor, general practitioner.
Jesus, that'll change.
To diagnose sickness, and it's very effective at it.
There's a list here of most common jobs in America. We take one example of the States. And number 1 is retail. Number 2, cashiers. Number 3, office clerks. Number 4, food preparation. Number 5, nurses. Number 6, waiters and waitresses. And number 7, customer service. And 8, janitors and cleaners. Out of those, probably nurses are the least likely to be automated. But I'd say most of the others risk a high degree of...
retail, it's already happening, right?
Look at Amazon online shopping.
And self-service checkouts in the supermarket, which I refuse to use, by the way. I'm sorry, but you ever find yourself like, oh shit, I'm accidentally working in a supermarket now. How did that happen?
I didn't sign up for this. Yeah.
Good luck avoiding that one in the Netherlands, by the way, because there's Albert Heijn's that are transitioning almost to 100% self-service checkout. There are actually. At the stations, they do not have any...
Oh, mate, fuck that noise. I refuse. I had in Tesco's once, right, when they go, oh, sorry, sir, there's no cashier, so if you use self-service checkout. I'm said to go, no, sorry, like, I don't work here. He looks at me funny. But I told him, I was like, I don't want to use the self-service checkout. Are you refusing to serve me? And once I said that, he was like, oh, no, like, come this way.
I'll go and open it myself.
Yeah, and I'm like, damn right.
But Chris, it's almost like you're an old guy who doesn't want to use a mobile phone.
What?
Right? This is where society is going to. We're going to the automated society.
No, I'm a socialist that's concerned about people getting fired. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just getting old.
Job number 9 on that list was freight stock and hand material laborers. I think that means like basically people working in logistics, right? So that's a huge.
That's the first part.
That's going to be a huge, and office clerks. I mean, office clerks. They're going to be a huge amount of automation.
The knock-on effect is massive as well. When you don't have the whole continent of Europe and North America transporting freight, hotels cease to exist, service stations cease to exist. Well, what's the point? And so just looking at it job by job is amazing. As you say, I think 8 out of those 10 jobs probably will be automated soon, right?
Or will face a significant degree of automation within that job.
Sure, but the whole sector... The way cities and roads are built is all based around humans understanding them. Like, road signs aren't necessary when you have an autonomous vehicle, right? The whole insurance industry, right? It's more than just people driving cars. The entire knock-on of how cities are planned, built, designed, constructed, those people fed, watered, entertained. It's all going to change.
Yeah.
Drastically. It's a big change.
Drastically. This is what they're pointing out, right? It's not the industrialization and taking AI into effect, which is taking into effect right now. One of the reasons why driverless cars is possible, but it will get crazier and crazier and crazier, is that it's going to massively change. And with job automation, I want to make this point as well, is what you get is an increase in worker productivity without the need of workers. There's the capital gains there, right? Mm-hmm. And
Well, I think you said something really interesting, Meringue, to quote Finn.
See, now you're guilty of it.
I make interesting points. Thank you.
Other than Donald Trump bringing back coal plants, it's almost never an issue when working class people lose an entire industry. But once doctors start losing their job, once the middle class start losing the jobs they've spent 15 years studying to get, wow, we're going to hear about it. Then it's going to become a big news story. Then people are going to care a lot.
But it's going to happen soon. I mean, the predictions are within the next 20 years, right? So this is why it's such a subject right now.
Yeah, I believe there are a lot of people who are kind of sticking their kind of head in the sand to some degree. You know, I've been talking to people about UBI and job automation for the last month, just bringing up the issue with everyday people that I know, that I meet. And I think people don't realize the full extent of how much automation is going to happen, but even the extent to which it happens now, like you guys said about supermarket checkouts, all these automated machines we use on a daily basis, they've all had an effect, but it hasn't had a huge impact yet. But imagine if that continues along with AI, then we're going to be in trouble. Why do we need UBI for this? What are the two why are they linked together?
I'll take that. I think partially it's conceptual. It allows us to talk about new systems to redistribute wealth and how we're going to live with the modern economy. So it's just important as a subject point. And I think the second is it's experiments within current social welfare systems to see how we can do it maybe more effectively. And the experiments you can see by country are different as well. It's not a single...
Yeah, there's been a few different pilots, hasn't there? I think they tried it in
Finland. There's a couple.
They've tried it in Canada.
In Holland, there's multiple different ones even. But they're even different sort of experiments. So they're trying to see like what is best way to work a social welfare system.
So, I mean, I'm interested because you've talked about social welfare. You've talked about redistributing wealth, right?
Yeah.
I think the next step is then seizing the control of the means of production. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, you're going to communism.
It sounds a bit like communism to me.
No, it's checks and balances. It's regulated capitalism because unregulated capitalism doesn't work. So we thought that the trickle-down economy, or there were voices that said that the trickle-down economy would work. And instead, what you can see, it's risen to unparalleled income inequality. And capital is just going to the capital investors, right? The shareholders are the only drive of a company. And this is not the way it used to work. And this, I don't think, is the way it should work within a society that is going to get a lot of capital gains from automation. And if the capital is just going to the few, right, large shareholders, then you're going to get a class-divided society.
Right. So can I ask a question at this point? Why do we need a redistribution? And this is aside from communism. Like, why is redistribution of capital important? Because I think everyone on the political spectrum would agree to some extent that there needs to be some kind of redistribution.
Because we don't want to live in a class-divided society, right? The Babylonians had into law that you had the proper Babylonians, then you had the commoners, and then you had the slaves. And if you would kill a commoner as a proper Babylonian, like an elite, then it just costs you a few coins. If you kill the slave, even less. But if, as a commoner, you would kill an elite, well, goodbye. They kill you, right? So, but like in nowadays, modern days, what did we try to do? We try to create an equal system, right? People are based, we're all equal.
No.
That's what's in the... Yeah, you don't think so?
I'm going to disagree with a bunch of what you've just said.
Yeah?
Yeah, quite comfortably. So
this is modern culture.
There's a false dichotomy of either you have communism or, advanced late stage evil trickle down economics capitalism, right? Like that's the ends of the spectrum, the extreme ends of the spectrum. And then there's a lot of nuance and middle ground that we can discuss, right? I get it. People voting to give their corporate lobby sponsors a tax cut. It is hardly the best for society. At the same point, there's a few things you said where you're like, compared us to the Babylonians. Well, look, I don't think the desire of a perfect society is for everyone to be equal. Not at all. Different people have different abilities and different talents. And I believe in meritocracy. If you make a game so people are rewarded for bringing something to society. So I saw this meme the other day, and it said, teach a man to fish and he'll feed himself for life. But if you sell a man a fishing rod and then you control the means of a fishing rod production, then you'll make all the profit and you're not helping society. And I just disagreed with it fundamentally because I'm like, well, you are, because you invented the fishing rod and you sold it to people and you should be rewarded for that innovation. And that meritocracy is what drives development and improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in the social safety net. You don't believe that people that can maybe due to unfortunate or other reasons cannot contribute as much as other people, or people that maybe contribute in ways that are not valued as much, right?
Okay.
The art industry nowadays in Holland not very valued. Used to be sponsored by governments, right? They had subsidies for it. They take away all the subsidies and they say now you guys have to earn the money yourself, right? If it's not a commercial product, the art you're selling, then maybe you should be making different art.
So let's pick that apart, because there is another false binary there, right? Like, I'm not saying I don't value society. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's a meritocracy and Mad Max style, you survive or you die. Like,
so we're talking about checks and balances then.
Yes. Which I will agree with.
It's exactly what I said is the point as well, is you need to have capitalism with checks and balances.
Yes, you did. But then you went on to say that we want an equal society and trickle-down economics is evil. And I'm saying, I disagree with that.
I recently read Sapiens by Yuval Harari. And he makes the point of genes, right? Genes is an expression of the fact that we don't want to have a class-divided society. Yeah, 50, 60 years ago, you wouldn't be caught dead unless you were working class with Levi's jeans on, because it would ruin your name. But nowadays, we all want to be like equalized, so we all wear jeans. Jeans come from that cultural move to having a less class-divided society. So I think that is part of modern thinking. I'm not even saying that is the way Homo sapiens should live together, but I think that is the way culture is moving nowadays. Liberal.
I mean, all things Western in moderation, though, right? Like, I don't want everyone forced to wear the same clothes. And like you say, like art, like it's nice that someone might have a. Sounds like it to me.
At this point, I think it's worth clarifying what we mean by equal. If we're talking about equality of outcome, equality of opportunity, equal rights, equal amount of money, because these are all different aspects of equality that could be interpreted by people listening. So what exactly are we talking about when we talk about equality?
In terms of UBI, equal opportunity.
I agree with Meringue that there should be a baseline. Right, I don't want to see anyone starving to death, especially not in a country.
That is UBI. UBI is the baseline. UBI is where we say, because we have this much automated income, we can tax corporations, tax capital, and this is a baseline that we can.
I mean, UBI is one solution to your baseline, right? It's not the only
I'm
answer.
Saying I'm not saying it's the end point. I'm saying it's the start of a great debate on how we are going to deal with the redistribution of wealth.
Okay.
To give everyone a good baseline as a check and balance.
My main problem with redistributing wealth is who do you take it from and why? And some of the things I've heard proposed are take it from the companies who are taking jobs away. And that would be the equivalent of in the Industrial Revolution having a tax on people inventing machines. I don't want an innovation tax. Amazon, for all their evil, right, spend more money on research and development than almost any country on earth. Tesla as well.
Chris, the funny thing is, innovation is a trap. Because we all used to think that innovation would lead to more equality, more development, happier people. In fact, technology turns out, and there's a good text on MIT, that technology has actually led to growing inequality. So we even need technological innovation as much as we think we want.
I mean, so you can measure inequality and be like, oh, that's not fair. That person has trillions of dollars. But at the same point, if you look now, how many people have been catapulted out of poverty by capitalism and technological innovation. And I think, what was it I heard, that like a person in the average person in Africa now is doing better than the average person in America 60 years ago. That's how good capitalism and technology are at improving people's lives.
Oh yeah.
So I don't buy this. Capitalism's evil. Everyone's struggling. Like, you can point fingers at a trillionaire and go, that's really unequal, but I'm still having a good life. And technology is freaking awesome. Right now, we are in 3 separate countries communicating and recording something that is then available for publication worldwide.
It hasn't made us happier in general, though.
Studies
haven't
happy,
proven
right?
that humanity has become happier.
I would just interject here and say that I'm not arguing that technology is bad or that capitalism is bad as such. But there has to be some kind of redistribution, right? Because if, Chris, what you're saying hadn't happened, if capitalism had just made the rich richer and the poor worse off, then there would be some kind of revolution, right? Because if the poorest in the world are literally getting poorer and poorer, there's no incentive to go along with the system of society, right? And they would have a revolution, the tables would be flipped, and there would be no society, right? So I think it's in the interests of the poorest, the middle class, and also the very richest to ensure some kind of redistributive system, so that everybody is
some
better
sort of
off.
social mobility as well.
Ideally, social
right?
mobility.
Not just get money from rich to the poor, but is it possible for some poor people to change their class, right?
Ideally, but apparently I was watching a TED talk from the very same Alan de Botton I mentioned in the last podcast, and he was saying that social mobility is a bit of a myth, in that you're as likely to be poor and become rich nowadays as you were to have been a peasant to become one of the nobility in 200 or 300 years ago. So perhaps that's somewhat of an illusion.
I think most of it is an illusion.
The idea now is clearer. Like, we have this idea, like now you're socially mobile, you can become rich, but the reality is that the poorest don't have the same scope to become rich.
That's what I worry about. Like with the plan of UBI, I'm more interested in talking about investing in education and giving people options so that they can be. Whereas what I fear we'll end up with is just keep paying people enough to survive, but that's it. Then they're just stuck on that bottom rung. I disagree with the idea that if people don't have bullshit, meaningless jobs, they'll just be lazy. I think, people are intrinsically motivated, but I think you need some sort of meritocracy set up. And I think you also need a system where...
But you still have the meritocracy. It's not that the only income you'll ever have is the basic income. It's the base from which, on top of that, you can still earn more through whatever you do.
And I think Moran got to the crux of an issue earlier, when he said about forcing people to go to a government office to fill out paperwork, right? Now, but on the flip side of that, also giving them job training and making sure they are applying for jobs. And I think
so it needs to be holistic.
That's the either side of the coin, right? Because the promise of universal basic income is you waste a lot of government waste, a lot of bullshit jobs, a lot of admin, a lot of expenses, when in fact it would be cheaper just to send someone a check. But the flip side of that is some of these people don't just need a check, right? My sister works in social care, and a lot of what she does might determine whether they get more or less money, but also it's a home visit, and it's checking they're okay, and it's offering them education programs that would be beneficial for them and that would suit them, and it's giving them advice tailored to them and tailored on that relationship. Sometimes I hear people who, like the UBI puritanicals, who are saying we could remove all of these government agencies. That's terrifying.
No, but they're not talking about replacing everything. The education budget is separately, the healthcare budget is separately. I don't know how it works in England, but here in Holland, home care...
Just removing the bureaucrats and admins that are there to check, right?
Yeah, it's here in Holland, the people that go to people's homes to give some care, that's a different part of the economy than what they're talking about with UBI.
I mean, what I find interesting as well is in America, libertarians are using UBI as a Trojan horse to talk about cutting the welfare state further. So they're like, right, rather than Forget a national health service for America. Let's just pay people enough UBI to cover a very basic insurance plan, and let's dismantle the entire Medicaid system. So
yeah, that's not the one that I'm talking about.
No, I'm sure. No doubt.
So Chris, that's a really interesting. Rewind. Chris, that's a very controversial point that you've just made. Why do you think it is that?
Sorry. I mean, that's gonna be the next one.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a very controversial point behind.
I'll do it again.
Jens's abuse will never stop. Don't worry. Don't overthink that.
Chris, that's quite a controversial point you just made about the Trojan horse. Why do you think it is that liberals, or conservatives rather, in the US want to dismantle that sort of welfare state? What do you think they're getting out of it? Do you think it comes from some kind of further down, like a deeper belief in the fact that we have to work hard, that we have to incentivize to work? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into the Koch brothers lobbying and the evils of late stage capitalism.
Why not?
But well, because I think that should be a podcast in and of its own right. But to answer directly to Finn's point, there is this philosophy that there's the bunch of welfare queens, right? That, I mean, however you set up the payments, let's say you pay per child. Well, okay, then they're going to pop out 14 kids for the welfare check. That's the boogeyman of the conservative right. And this idea that, the current economic system, because of government interference, incentivizes people against working hard, against getting involved in society and contributing in really meaningful ways. Now, I don't buy into that at all, right? I'm just going to say, I saw a really interesting TED Talk where the gentleman discussed how sugarcane farmers, I think they only get a crop yield one time per year. And so for the rest of the year, for half the year, there's not much work to be done and there's no money to be had. And they get all their money at one point in the year. And they studied these people. And I think at the point where they get their yield and they get all their money, their IQ jumps up 15 points.
Oh, yeah. I know the study. Wow. Yeah, people start, if they don't have money, they act 15 points IQ lower.
Yeah, I totally can comprehend that and relate to it, because you go into a hibernation mode, right? I've had times in my life where I've had to work hard and there's been a lot to do and there's been everything to win and a lot to lose. And so you're like, it's all on the line, right? And then, when you're working, let's say minimum wage retail job where you're paid on an hourly rate, and it doesn't really matter whether you're particularly good at that job or bad, you'll probably get to keep it. That is a bullshit job. And that isn't incentivizing you to work hard or contribute to society or the economy. So I don't believe this, that, if we look after people and stop them starving to death, they won't work hard. I think the current system isn't encouraging people to get educated in their spare time to try their own business.
Chris, why become a philosopher? Who's going to pay you to be a philosopher? No one.
Leave it alone. That's not nice.
This is really difficult, and that's why I haven't become a philosopher, despite having studied it.
This is what it's about. This is why the arguments go up. It gives people more time to spend time and effort on things that might contribute to society, but currently is not valued within the capitalist system.
Maybe a good side point to make here would be one about time banks. Have you guys heard about time banks? Andrew Yang, who's running for president in the US in 2020, and he's trying to run for president as a way of promoting UBI and getting us to re-examine the importance of job automation and how we're going to deal with all of this. And he brings out the issue of time banks. So the idea would be...
I heard of time banks in the context of Japan, where people say they live in different cities to their parents, right? And they can do an exchange of if I take your parents out to dinner and check they're okay, could you return the favor? But that's a direct swap, right? And what they ended up doing is an actual time bank system where people volunteer their time and put credit in and out and do favors for each other in a collective contributive society. It sounds lovely. Is it that?
Yeah, more or less that's the idea. So the idea is, say if there was a universal basic income, say you get the minimum amount of money each month, 600 euros, £1,000, $1,000, whatever it might be. That's enough to cover your food, your rent, maybe clothes, but you don't have much money left over. So maybe you could get a job, maybe you could work part-time to get a bit of spare cash to save up for a holiday, whatever it might be. But then what are you going to do with your time? Well, you could put these time banks in place, as they do already exist in many countries and many societies. And the idea is you volunteer an hour of your time. Say an old person wants to redecorate their house, so you volunteer 3 hours of your time. You've got 3 hours of time bank. So then you say, well, I'm moving flat actually, so I could do with a hand, you know. So then you ask the time bank, and someone says, yeah, I'm up for helping you moving your flat. And it's almost like it doesn't necessarily have to be a job, but you can get loads of stuff done, and it has a social value. So it brings societies closer together. You get to know your neighbors, your local community, and it would be a way to enable people to do meaningful things in a community sense without necessarily it being only a
technological approach to having people help each other out.
It would also combat this isolation that technology can bring, in a sense. You know, although we can Skype and all of these great things, there's also this kind of loneliness, which is like the other side of the coin of technology, and that people interact more with their phones and less with people. And this would kind of bring some balance to the force, so to speak, right? To get to know people and do things that have a meaningful, visible, tangible impact on other people's lives.
I mean, I love the idea. I think the problem, and we hinted at this earlier when we talked about how, you know, say a nurse doesn't get paid much. I think that's a tragedy and a sin. And the question is, you know, are you going to fix that? Because honestly, if you're a financier, it's a bullshit job. You're helping a billionaire make 12% instead of 7% on his investments. But he gets a percentage of that, and that is a large amount of money he's moving. So obviously it requires education, a lot of trust, and a reasonable amount of intelligence and luck. And you know, how would you ever value a nurse to that amount without a hugely expensive taxation system? But perhaps with something like this time bank system, we could start valuing caring work more. And I think that's
it, right? It's the value. It's capitalism doesn't put a value on it, not the current version of capitalism.
Not an accurate value, because honestly, if you look, most of the jobs will be replaced by robots, but that won't be, right? Like someone caring for you in an education or a healthcare environment. So, okay, you've got IBM Watson who can diagnose it. Well, brilliant. There are all sorts of inefficiencies in the medical system at the moment, right? Have you guys ever thought about pharmacists? So a doctor, right, writes a prescription, and it used to be a pharmacist would then get 12 grams of this chemical and 12 chemicals of that potion and mix it up and give it to you, right? But now, what does a pharmacist do that a doctor's prescription couldn't get you it ordered from Amazon? Really? So there's loads of...
Yeah, but then the system here in Spain is very different. Like, you can go to a pharmacy without having to go to a doctor to treat
right,
most of
so
your
it's sort of like frontline.
They have enough medical knowledge to advise and give stuff. So it's like a front line before you have to go to the doctor with something more serious. So in that sense, it makes more sense
everywhere, right? It's a person who cares and has a communication
with you.
And maybe you say you're fine. If you just describe your symptoms and you go, you're fine, and they look at you and like, you're not looking fine, mate. You were looking pretty healthy last week, and now you're looking really tired, and you're not like an actual person with feelings who knows you, who gives a shit. I'd like to see a lot more of that.
And it's a communal sense. Yeah, there is a communal element to it. You know, it's like local pharmacies. You know, you go to the one where you like the people who work there, and you build up a bit of a relationship with them. And
I feel maybe the danger of that is, if you guys heard of the social credit system.
I've read some things about it. Yeah, can you explain that for all the listeners and for us?
Yeah, so they're trying to sort of put a ranking system in place in China where you're ranked and rated on whatever you do within your life. So everything you do, including jaywalking, but also helping an old lady cross, will influence your social score, and the social score will influence, well, basically how well your life is going to be, right? What apartments maybe you get, what opportunities you get. So, it's nice to have this sort of banking credit system, but how do we avoid it from running out of place? Whereas you could also just knock on the neighbor's door, introduce yourself, say hi. If you ever need someone, I'm here. If I ever need someone, can I knock on your door and
I
ask
think
for
the
some help?
Chinese credit system came about because nobody there had a credit rating system like there's established already in Europe, like a credit score. What the government wanted to do was combine a credit score with kind of a citizen score that, but it was also very cynical in terms of dissidence. If you did anything against the government or said anything against the government, your score would lower. But not only that, but people affiliated with you would also have their scores lowered. So it's kind of a method of social control to try and stop people.
Necessary in China because
dissenting.
They've had huge populations displaced from rural areas, they're moving into them city, right? They've lost all of those structures that they had. I mean, loads and loads of cities underwater because they built a dam somewhere. Loads of people used to be farmers, now they're construction workers. So they're just massively upheaving society and changing it. They've gone through an industrial revolution in 20 years. It took the rest of the world 100 years to go through. I don't think they've got it right necessarily, but I see the need, and it's a step in the right direction, I think. I chuckle when I see the West looking at it and going, oh, that sounds evil and big brotherish and terrible. And I'm like, sorry, how are these systems not in place already in the UK? In the Western world, you have a credit rating. You have people getting fined regularly for something they wrote on Twitter 5 years ago. We have a very similar system here, and it's easy to spot it as being weird when it comes out in another country.
Yeah.
Well, that's a new development as well, right? Like how the things you once said on Twitter can influence the rest of your working life.
Yeah.
It's a new development. I don't know what I feel about that, to be honest.
Apologies to fans of Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
I mean, I'm happy I posted most of the things online under a pseudonym, and I hope no one's ever gonna find out.
Well, now you've just given the game away, Brian. you just sealed your own
let's edit this out.
To edit that bit out.
And just to be clear, your name is Sweaty Bumbags, yeah? Cool.
I don't want the government to judge the things that I do in life. I'm a liberal in that kind of sense. I do think I'm not a liberal in an economic sense, but I'm a social liberal, so I don't think a social rating should be tied to it. And while I think something to incentivize people to help each other is good, I think still people need to learn to just be humans again.
Yeah, we need to get the village back, right? Like, I think moving to cities was a really important stage, and arguably more important than the Industrial Revolution. I read a great article which said how kind of moving to the cities has been the biggest civilization advance compared to a lot of things. But yeah, that's what we've lost, right? That sense of community and really knocking. So I went to university in a town that was, predominantly old people and students, and that was a really awkward mishmash. And I was talking to the mayor of Canterbury, who was saying about government programs they had in place to do this. And I explained that exactly as you said, Meringue, like when I was having a party, I would knock on my neighbors' doors either side and say, hi guys, I'm having a party tonight. You're very welcome to join. Here's my phone number. If it gets too loud, please let me know and we'll turn the music down. And just doing that meant that they were too British, so they never would complain, and I never had any problems with them. But they liked me because they didn't feel, they weren't scared to contact me, right? And it just, that little bit of communication is what so many people are missing where, and I get it, when you move to a city and you're only going to live somewhere for a year, and even your housemates, you're probably only going to be living with for 4 months. You're living in a 5-bedroom house where people are just continually rotating in and out. Why would you bother, right? People just put their heads down, ignore each other and commute to work and then go back and hide in their room and watch Netflix. But it is a depressing reality.
It's been an ongoing one since you push it to the urbanization. I push it further back down to the agriculture revolution. But I've been influenced a lot by the Harari book recently. So in Sapiens, Harari is describing the agricultural revolution as kind of a trap that we put ourselves into. We started to produce more rice and we thought like, okay, now we'll have greater lives. We'll have more to eat. We can have the safety to have more grains for the next couple of years. But what happened was actually that we've got more babies and the babies needed more food. And then the next year we still didn't have enough food. So we started building even bigger farms, so that next year we would have enough food, right? And this just kept going and going and going and going. And we still want more and more and more and more and more.
Is that why the Chinese Communist government starved everyone? Was that their clever plan?
I think that's just the other part of the agricultural part, is that since we've become agriculturalists, we've put ourselves vulnerable to food shortages. We can't go back.
For the whole of the world to live at America's level, we'd need 6 planets, right?
Yeah, so become vegan.
I'm toying with the idea.
We're going to discuss that in a future podcast.
Oh God, yeah. Why does everyone hate
I think
vegans?
it'd be a great episode. Also, there was, just before you go on, Chris, I wanted to mention negative income tax as an alternative.
We're not doing an interview this episode, right?
No, none of that.
But how much it's going to cost is, I don't think something...
We can answer, and we're not economists, and there's so many different models of UBI.
There's different systems, right? Like, it's been calculated we can afford a certain part of UBI here in Holland without any change, or any extra taxation, and we could maybe change the taxation systems a little bit to allow for more.
Sorry, what is this other system you were learning about? Negative...
I was sent a link by my friend Lewis, and the idea is called negative income tax. So it's similar to UBI, because what would happen essentially is that it would replace the current benefit system, working tax credits, basically in the UK, the Department of Work and Pensions. So what would happen is everyone would have a basic income. If you're not employed, you would get paid that money from the state, and then if you work, less tax is taken off you, and as you earn more, you begin to pay more tax. So it's like a halfway between universal basic income, which is pay everyone this flat amount every month, and the current system, which is very bureaucratic, and there's a lot of administration that means you have to go, what are you earning, what's this, how many kids you got, blah, blah, blah. Whereas this is just based on the individual also, so there's no household income or household working things out. So it would be, okay, you don't have a job, well, you get this amount of money every month. Oh, you've got a part-time job, okay, now you don't get as much, but it works out that you still get a bit more than the basic. And once you have a better job, you're paying a bit more tax. And then when you have a good job, you're paying tax.
That sounds a sensible halfway home. I think one thing that you got to be careful with, and conservatives are right here, is do you really want a world where you start work and then you realize that you'd be on about the same if you stopped work, so you might as well stop? I don't think that's in anyone's interest. So it's just about getting the measures and the levels right. Researching this I was quite libertarian and against big government, but researching that, you actually find out that governments do some things quite well. If you looked at the last recession, I think child poverty actually went down because they were able to target the right families at the right time.
Was this in America?
Yeah. And the problem with the universal basic income model, a disabled woman with 4 mentally handicapped children as a single mother, it's going to have very different needs financially to a different family setup, right? That's the concern from actually some quite liberal left-wing people, is that the current system, for all its inefficiencies and problems, is quite good at recognizing where the need is most. And as cold and hard and simple as a universal basic income says, that administrative overhead sometimes comes with a better understanding of who needs what and why. Mm-hmm. You've piqued my interest, and I am interested. I do like some of the things. I think we need to be careful how we would game this. I think we need to be careful who we take money off in the current benefit system. And I also think we need to specify where that tax is coming from. And what I really want to avoid, as I've said before, is an innovation tax. And I think what the fear is that let's say we tax any company that's putting people out of jobs with robots, right? What you then do is you just make American robots, for example, more expensive. And so then people all buy from China, where they don't have such a system and they don't have such a tax.
We have trade tax for that.
Oh, okay. But we do have a case in Europe where we put tariffs on wood and environmental policy, but we just outsource the problem to countries that don't follow those rules,
Carbon
right?
tax. I don't know. There should be checks and balance system for that as well.
Potentially.
See, what I'm scared of. See, I think this whole basic income, whether it be negative income or basic income, is just the first step towards thinking about what we're going to do when automation is going to drastically change the economy. And if you're not going to tax innovation, and you're going to let these Amazons and other technological companies just grow and grow and grow into the billions and billions and billions, what we've seen with the current capitalist system is that, unlike 50 years ago, this is what Elizabeth Warren is trying to point out, 50% of the capital gains of a company would go to shareholders, the other 50% to the employees and the environment, like the village, the environment. And now it's 93% goes to the capitalist investors, to the shareholders. And if you allow all that automation income to go there rather than elsewhere, and you're not going to tax it, then I think that's going to lead to a class-divided society.
Well, we have a class-divided society.
Heavily.
You mean
and the loss of the middle class, right? Which you pointed to.
Class-divided society.
Yeah, loss of the middle class.
And the risk is that the current welfare system doesn't have the means in place to deal with these drastic changes. And what could result in is a life without dignity for the poorest in society. And that for me would be my big worry. You know, there needs to be a minimum level of security and dignity for those who are being affected the most by all of these changes.
So I'm pro way bigger corporate taxes. I'm pro holding corporations, not just seeing them as a legal entity, but also as a moral entity, just like human beings are. Human beings are also held responsible for what they cause. Corporations aren't necessarily. And tax them way heavier. Part of that taxation is going to go to basic income. Other part is going to education, and another part is going to healthcare. And the mother that has 4 children and medical problems, she would get extra money from the medical part of the system.
I think it's a fascinating model. And it definitely warrants more research. My concluding comment would be, let's try it more. Let's try more experiments with UBI, with negative income tax. Let's try it in different scenarios as well, not just in countries like in Alaska where they've got an abundance of wealth from oil, but let's try it in lots of different scenarios in poorer countries like in Africa, in India, in South America. See how it works there. Does it have the same effect? Does it give the worst off a more dignified existence? Then I would say, yeah, it's a success. But the question of taxation and where does the money come from is a key issue.
There's need for a bit more nuance and clarification. I don't like the sound of this company's made loads of money, let's take it off them. And I think there's a middle way. So hear me out, okay? There are some companies that do invest back into society. There are some companies that pay their workers well. There are some companies whose workers aren't reliant on government programs. Bernie Sanders is taking Amazon to task about this at the moment, right? They're paying almost no tax, and yet their workers are relying on food stamps, and they don't have healthcare and all this sort of thing. And you know, you said earlier in America it used to be more fairly redistributed than it is now. That's true, but I believe after World War II, the way the system would work is if a company was reinvesting in its workplace or in innovation, the tax rate was really low. Whereas if the company was just hoarding money for its shareholders, the tax rate was super high. And that was their plan to kickstart the economy, to be like, guys, if you're putting it back in, you're not going to get taxed on that. And that way, we're not taxing innovation. We're not taxing great minds doing great works. But if you're just making your shareholders richer and it has no benefit to society and no one's paying tax on it, sorry, but there's a price to pay for that. So I think that would be a more nuanced thing. And I think that it becomes an easy target for the right wing when they hear left-wing people saying, let's tax the rich. I think you have to come at it with a more nuanced approach. Let's tax the rich that aren't contributing, that aren't paying tax, that aren't adding anything to society. And when you say that, it's more difficult for them to argue with you. Whereas when you put an innovation tax, you're making yourself an easy target.
I think that's what Elizabeth Warren refers to with her accountable capitalism.
Sure. And I think the other thing is I'd rather see the old companies, like coal plants and the polluters. I'd rather see the old companies, the people that are making pollution, making carbon, making world the worst place. I'd rather see them taxed than the most innovative ones making incredible advancements in AI.
So you definitely can't fault them all. But yeah, we need to think about different systems. And I do agree, Chris, that the biggest danger with basic income is losing sight of which people need more help than others.
Mm-hmm. And the other pushback I've heard against basic income is that, you know, you talked about the Department of Work and Pensions, Finn. And if you make a universal basic income, the government then has less power to negotiate with the big employers about what pension rate they should be paying. In effect, you've removed the need for a pension, right? It's now the government's responsibility, not employers.
But pension is going to be a huge issue in the future. You know, it's just growing and growing. It's a massive slice of the welfare state. And I think it could be an interesting one to incorporate into universal basic income. But you're right in that companies should ideally pay some percentage into a shared pot. I'm not convinced we're going to get pensions when we're older.
I agree.
I'm not counting on it. I'll put it that way.
I'm relying on AI to solve it.
I'm just going to have a pet robot that works for me. I like the idea of a social bank where, honestly, how many old people could still contribute to society? You know, maybe not a 9 to 5 day a week job in an office, but, you know, they're looking for things to do. They've got loads of experience, they've got social skills, they're smart. I was talking to a Mormon yesterday who was saying how what he really liked about his gatherings is that they're taught to respect their elders, and when they attend churches on Sunday, a lot of it is just talking, and it's not particularly talking about religion. It was this old guy like telling a story and what he learned from it, and a bunch of 19-year-olds, and I was thinking, if these guys didn't go to church, where would they get that? What have we replaced that with in our modern society? And so, I can really imagine a social bank where retired people can donate time they have to educating younger people. The school I went to was a lot of 60-year-old retired Oxbridge professors, right? And I got a huge amount of value from hearing their thoughts.
Sure, education. Look at growing vegetables, for example. Communal vegetable patches, allotments. Old people love spending time outdoors. It's great for their health. It's great for their frame of mind, their mental and physical. And that could be used in some kind of organic, local, cooperative growing system. And people can get fresh, cheap, organic vegetables from their local patch. They could learn, they could get volunteers. And there's a lot of scope to do these kind of social projects. And I think we'll be seeing more of Time Bank, even if it's not I don't think it has to be a government thing, but I think people are going to become more interested in this kind of social projects in the future.
Well, it might be good to start valuing things not in terms of economy and money.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, yeah! You put $1 on everything, and what is it? If someone gets cancer, the GDP of a country goes up. Yeah. So, moving on. Do we have any strange logical fallacies in this area?
I would bring forth maybe the tu quoque.
What's that?
You avoid having to engage with criticism by turning it back on the accuser. You answer criticism with criticism. So I've seen this, right? UBI criticizes the current distribution of wealth, the inequality of wealth. But then it's immediately answered with criticism of UBI rather than allowing UBI to be a conversation point that allows us to look at other opportunities and look at what we can do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one I had was, talking about this as, utopian, unrealistic expectation. And the question was, can you imagine, the current Conservative government enacting it? Well, no, I can't imagine them doing anything successfully, to be honest. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't discuss ideas. And the idea of, that is too high. Well, every mountain is too high to jump in one step. Doesn't mean it's not worth heading in that direction, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the one I've encountered is particularly in terms of job automation, but also maybe to some extent, like you just described, Chris, is the argument to ridicule. So people say, well, that's so crazy, it can't be true, right? And I think it comes from a lack of awareness of how rapidly technology is evolving, maybe a misunderstanding or lack of understanding of artificial intelligence and algorithms, because they're so hard to understand. It's like quantum physics. It's so difficult to understand that there are machines. We've invented an algorithm that taught itself how to play the game Go and then beat the best human player in the world. Not because it was programmed to, but because it just had the ability to teach itself how to play the game, which is absolutely it just blows my mind.
People really don't understand how smart machines are. So as you say, if you ask the developers of AI how they did it, they can't tell you anymore.
Yeah.
Because what they do is they set up a Darwinian competition and let a bunch of programs rewrite themselves through mutations, and then they work out which one's the best, and they just run that for 10 trillion cycles, and then they end up with the best at any given tasks. And then if you had to ask the developers of that program, so how does it do it? We don't know.
Yeah.
What's the equation that works it? Give us 6 months and we might be able to work it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is just narrow. This is narrow artificial intelligence. This isn't wide or true artificial intelligence. When that happens, if it's even possible, when that happens, it will be just an absolute game changer for everything. It will be another entity existing alongside humanity.
Yeah. So this brings me as well to my favorite controversial opinion. I like to be hopeful. If we don't blow ourselves up in the next 50 years and AI comes, I feel AI, since it's going to be the best of the best, is going to be way better than any of us in redistributing wealth and setting up the economy. So that everyone has opportunity, but is also challenged to maximize whatever they can.
So do you think we'll just be able to ask the computer what the solution to universal basic income is, and they'll give us the answer?
It's gonna be like million to million degrees smarter than us.
I'd like to take the chance to say that we love Skynet and we love our computer overlords. Thank you, computer overlords. You are wonderful. We are your loyal subjects.
Have faith.
I think what they're going to do is they're just going to say, all you got to do is just get this little jack connected to your neck. Just plug yourself in to pop yourself in this little amniotic sac and go to sleep.
Brilliant.
We'll take care of it. And then we'll be in the Matrix.
Well, we knew it was coming since 2000, so they'll consider it.
Then you don't need income, you just need basic nutrient supplements and you're fine.
Yeah. Universal basic nutrients. There we go.
All right, I think we've solved the world's problems then. AI will have the answer. AI will solve its own problem.
So, do you guys have any favorite controversial opinions, or should we wrap it up?
I think that covered it quite nicely. I don't have anything really to add on that.
Okay, so then I'd like to challenge our listening audience to point out what logical fallacies we've committed ourselves this time. We're actively looking for guest speakers as well to discuss subjects like feminism, gender diversity, Israel, veganism, many other topics. So if you recommend someone we should talk to, please don't hesitate to tag them or message us. We're also looking for creative sponsors, so if you have something you'd like to promote and could volunteer some time to help us make this podcast better, don't be shy to reach out. Nate Silver in The Signal and the Noise illustrates why there's no point having debates between people that are 100% certain of opposing views. By definition, there's no room for anyone to be persuaded. See if you can persuade someone by allowing yourself the possibility of being persuaded. See if you can teach how to go beyond binary by learning yourself.
From Cordoba, I'm Finn.
From Amsterdam, I'm Marijn.
And from London, I'm Chris. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
I can already hear the music.
Nice. Well, I'm unemployed. I'm basically living the universal basic income dream at the moment.
Not teaching anymore, Finn.
I'm going back in October. I've been on like a sabbatical
since
right. Middle of May. So yeah, now I've got back from this from Rotterdam, this reggae festival. I was doing some stuff with my sound system, and that was really good, man. So cool, really good. Didn't drink, had a great time. Did yoga and shit. Did loads of dancing. Was working as a translator. It was fantastic. I've got a gig with there's this stand called Veggie Pirates, and they're like these falafel wrap hummus selling.
What?
Psytrance gypsy pirates.
That's crazy.
They're hilarious. It's a little proper joke.
Sounds great.
And I basically got myself a gig with them at Azora Festival in Hungary.
Really? Holy shit! Now I want to go to Azora next year. I'm gonna
do it, man. It'd be so joke.
I would really love to. I really love to go to Azora.
I've never been, but I've always been interested by it.
I've heard it's the best. Out of all of them. Yeah, but from all the psychedelic festivals, this one is generally the highest regarded.
Yeah, man. So that should be quite fun.
Awesome.
It's quite fruitful getting to know them. Yeah. So Chris, let me know if I can do anything with the editing, because basically I'm more or less free. I mean, I've got shit to do. I'm still unpacking. I'm still moving into my place, but it's bit by bit,